Okay, so in this video, we're actually going to walk through the process of wiring up our search box. Now, as you can see here, we have category search box, you have the location search box, and this is related to all the job postings. So what we need to do is find all the locations for all the jobs that are posted and all the departments for all the, aka categories for all the jobs that are posted, and load these drop-down menus based off of that. Now, looking at this, you have several options. And if you look at the list here, we have our job posting list here. This has 100,000 items inside of it. And basically what we have to do is extract all the locations and make that distinct, all the departments and make those distinct, and list those here. Now, I was able to go ahead and create the necessary views to do this. So if we click on departments, these are all the departments for all the job postings, and it should be dynamic. So if we have a new job posting for advertising, for an example, which is not listed here, it should dynamically be populated in that drop down list, because that's, even though it's one, that's one of the options for a department. And the same is true for location. So say, for example, if there's a location that is outside of our standard locations and the job postings is added, not only should we have the ones that we have here, and this is just a group by view with very minimum listing of columns, just the ID and the name of the location, but it shows you how many counts and links that you have for that particular location. And then also here at the top, you have a location that's not populated. So this is all nice, and actually in the UI, I was able to put this together, and as you can see, it's pretty performing. It takes about 2-3 seconds to load, but it's calculating all the values for 100,000 items, which is pretty impressive. But the problem is, because we're using the REST API, there is no REST API option to go and grab this list and for this particular view and bring back all the items for that view. And we also, because it's a group by, that gets a little bit more tricky on how do you accommodate the grouping of that and what's the timing of that grouping. So I looked at a couple of options. I looked at the view option, which is not out of the box REST API. I would have to build a custom web API in order to pull that off. So the view option is an option, but it's not a great option because I have to do some custom dev. The other option is to use, because the groupBY is not an OData call, because you know that most of the time when we make calls for lists, out of the box lists and all this other good stuff, we're able to do like OData parameters like filter by or sort by or order by or select and all this other good stuff. There is no groupBY, or the groupBY OData attribute or operation is not supported by out of the box REST API. So we can't do the groupBY there. And then there's one other one, or actually two more. So the other one is to use the camel query, and I think I still have a sample of this. I didn't realize this, but after doing some research, you can actually do a camel call against the REST API. So here's your API endpoint. This is very similar to what we've been doing. But instead of items at the end, we have this get items operation, and we can do a post request. And then here within the post request, there is, it's not listed here, but there actually should, no, here it is. There's a data attribute in the post, and then that data is where you actually pass in the camel query. And this camel query, this is your traditional SharePoint camel, to where you can manipulate this and do whatever you need to do within the confines of this view and query tag. And here I have a group by, and you can do a group by department. This is incorrect for my instance because I'm using the display name. This needs to be your internal name, so JP category. You can do a group by that way, and it groups it and returns the items. The problem is the result set that it returns is the entire list. It's not as nice as this. Like, even though I said collapse, because you can pass that as an attribute here, like in your groupBY collapse equals true, where it should only return the groups and maybe the count. I'm trying to get it to look very similar to this, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. And actually, it crashed every time I tried to use it. So maybe if my list was probably under like 1,000 or so to where it can do that query. I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but it doesn't seem like it was efficient enough to handle. But that's another option. And our last option, which is the one we actually will use here, is to actually, if you take a look at this in search, let's see, I want to do a search on, let's say, marketing. Right, so this is our generic search, and this is Search API. This is just going to allow us to get like a visual. And if I switch this over to, I don't have jobs here, but if I had like a job navigation or a page created, what you get is you get these refiners on the side, and this is actually perfect. One, the refiner is going to allow you to extract all of the departments and all of the locations that are actually in your result set. And it's not going to be what's on the page. It's going to be the result set, in this case, the whole 5,761 items. So if I do something like, I don't know how, oh, maybe a star, bring back everything. Put the word job in here, maybe I get better results. Oh, that's nasty. Yeah, see, that has 227,000. So my refiners are going to be based on the total count and not necessarily on a particular page. And that's exactly what I need. So I need to do like a star search or a wildcard search for all. Oh, this is in the Search Center. We haven't updated the Search Center with the latest and greatest master and page layout. That's why that came out looking funky. So that's what we're going to do. So the question is, okay, how do you manipulate that REST API to extract out the refiner results? So let's take a closer look. So if we just a recap, let's see what we get initially from our REST API. So let me just go into refresh this. Let me filter this on query, because query is part of the REST API call. Now, if you saw in the, I think 2 videos ago, we were making the REST API call in order to bring back the job posting results. And if we look at the results set, and then you go under tables and then rows and then results, this is what we have now. And this is the relevant results. But you also, if you collapse this relevant results, you also have this guy here called refinement results. And right now this is null because we are actually not passing in the refiner. So if you look at the original request, we're only looking at the properties, and we do a keyword wildcard search, but we don't specify the refinement properties. Okay, fine. So what we can do, we can adjust this to make the refinement copy. So let me do this. Let me show you the snippet of code, the URL that will actually make this happen. That's going to be this guy here. So let me copy this into Notepad, and let me go right below this guy here. So if you look at this, this is going to be what's needed. So we still do our search API here, and we're still going to do a wildcard keyword search, which says bring me back everything. We're still going to scope it to our job posting result source, so that way all the logic to only look at job postings and not index, or I'm sorry, and not query document libraries or unrelated lists and all this other good stuff. That's what this result source is going to do. And again, this is just a recap. We go into much detail in this in the previous video. But then the secret is this guy here. It's this parameter here. You have to pass in the refiners. And as you can see here, I'm passing the last modified time, refinable string, and refinable string 00 and 01. And then the question is going to be, okay, how did you get that, and what do those represent? And it's nasty, right? So in order to, and then you just make these refinable. I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. You make these refinable. So basically what we have to do, we have to go from our list, our columns that hold all of our location and department data. We're going to have to take those crawl properties and map them to a managed property that has the refinable flag checked, right? And we talked about how crawl properties dynamically generated managed properties, but those are very low level. And most of the times, when you start doing advanced queries, which this can be considered an advanced query. When you do advanced queries, there are certain attributes you must need that those default managed properties will not have for you. So we need to go ahead and create those. All right, so this is a sneak peek of what that URL call for the REST API will look like. And once we pass this guy in, what you would notice is that this refinable results, they call them bins. I don't know why they call them bins, but this refinable results collection would then be populated, and it's going to give us all of the departments that match the results set, right? Not just on the page, but the entire collection, the total, and as well as all the locations that match or used in that result set. And then what we're going to do, we're going to extract that piece of it and go back to our slider to where we have those drop downs for categories and locations. We're going to go back to those sliders and then dynamically plug those in. All right, so the first things first, the first thing we have to do is get our columns mapped to the correct managed properties. So I've already done that, but I'm going to walk through that process with you. So if I go to the list here, and it's important that you only deal with internal names and not the display name. This is my job posting here, and I should have a location field, which is this guy here. JP location is going to be the internal name for that, and I should have one for department, and JP category is going to be the internal name for that. So let me just go ahead and pop this in the new tab. And then we want to go to our site collection level and look at the search schema. And again, because we prefix all our internal names associated with this job posting solution with JP, I can just do a simple search on JP. And it's going to give me matches on the managed properties. But what I'm looking for is more of the crawled property, which is this guy here. Now, this crawled property is mapped to, this is my JP location. This crawl property is mapped to this out of the box or defaulted managed property, which is this guy here. But the refine flag is not set, and that's the critical flag. And I need that set because that tells me that anything that's in here is refinable, and it's going to pop up in that refine results set collection in my results, right? So that's not there, but I do have that. I went ahead and mapped those guys to refinable string 00 and refinable string 01. And you can see that this first one is department and the second one is the location. And I also tried, and these have, you see the refine flag here is all set, and I can also sort on them. So this managed property has more capabilities than the default managed property, which is why we have to use those refinable string. Now, real quick, you have a couple options here. Obviously, this is not intuitive because if you're in the code and you're looking at refinable string 00, what is that? What is that mapped to? So you have to go through this exercise and find it and see which crawl property is mapped to, yada, yada, yada. I tried to go a user-friendly name, and they have this option there to use the alias. But every time I try to do a query or anything using this alias name, it didn't work. So I don't know if this is, I'm using SharePoint 2013 on-prem, and maybe there's a CU patch or something like that that fixes that. But for my current environment, it doesn't work. For maybe 2016, maybe it works, and maybe on SharePoint Online, maybe it works. But that would be the saving grace there, is that, okay, fine, I can use a refinable string 00, right? But then I'm going to just put an alias on it, so that way in the code, it makes sense and it's easy to represent what that managed property is doing, which column that managed property represents. So that's one way. The other way is to go through central admin and create a managed property there, right? Or create it here. How come you didn't create a managed property here? Or come here in your site collection and create a managed property here and map it that way. How come I didn't do that? Maybe I didn't do that because you can't do that in SharePoint Online. I don't know why I use these. So, okay, so maybe create the managed property here. Yeah, So that would probably be good. I have to look into that. I have to, maybe, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why. I have to research that, and I'll put it in the comment section. I want to say that in SharePoint Online, you can't create managed properties if you're a site collection admin and you're forced to use these buckets, right? These generic buckets, and that's why we dump it into. But anyway, that's what I've used, and I will confirm why I did that. But so that's where we are. So I have refinable 0 string 01 and 02. Now, how do you do that? It's actually very simple. So what you do is do a search on string, and this is going to bring you all the refinables, right? And 2 is wide open, and I know it's wide open because there's no managed property mapped to that. And then you just click on it, go all the way down here to the bottom, and hit add mapping. And now you just map it to your crawl property. And I do a search on JP, and my crawl property would be this guy here. Now you actually have 2 options. You have the choice value, and then you have the text value. And I can't remember which one's which, but I think for this intents and purposes, these may be the same value as far as like, you know, what they look like from a value perspective. But when you get into like crawl properties for like term sets or term stores or any of those other managed metadata properties, they become what you choose here as a crawl property, because sometimes they have 2 representatives, 2 different types of crawl property that represent the same site column. What you choose here will have an impact on the type of data that it brings back. Like one brings back like the GUID of the term set, and the other one brings back the actual name of the term set. So I chose this one because this is going to be the actual name. And we're not dealing with term sets. These are just choice columns, but this is going to be the actual name of the choice column. And that's what I'm mapping to. So I would just map this guy here to location. And because you can't rename this, you're kind of stuck with that refinable string. But it should, but I don't know why it doesn't work. You should be able to put a alias here. And I try to come up with a naming convention like JP ref for refiner location, and I'll just put like 2 because the other alias already exists. But something like that, and then you hit OK, and then you should be done. Now, I need to confirm this, but I want to say that once you do that mapping, you cannot use that that map until the full crawl executes. So, and if any time that you have, you're working in dev and you realize that you have to do a mapping because you need an attribute on a managed property that you don't get from the out of the box one or the dynamically generated one, what you want to do is go ahead and do that mapping in the other environments, so that way the full crawl can happen, and by the time you deploy to an environment, those are all set. And usually dealing with search solutions, that's what you run into. You run into the tedious piece of waiting for the incremental or the full crawl to execute and all this other good stuff. And another thing to keep in mind, like for that full crawl, in some scenarios, for the full crawl to really pick up your changes, you have to have data inside of that site column. So if there's nothing to crawl, which the data is which triggers that, say, hey, okay, there's data in the site column, let me index it and all this other stuff. So even though you may have your schema right, if there's no data in those columns, even though the full crawl executes, sometimes you don't get the mapping that you're expecting, or the dynamic for new site columns, dynamic managed properties that you expect. Again, just one of those nuances that you kind of discover and you find out when you start to work with this thing. And that's why these solutions, though search solutions are extremely, extremely powerful, but they can be extremely, extremely tedious, and you can bang your head against the wall trying to figure things out, why it doesn't work. All right, so that's it for that piece. So now let's go ahead and wire this up. So let's go into our solution, and we're going to go into services, because this is where we put all of our magic. And the job results is going to be very close to what we need to replicate here. So this is actually making I'm going to copy this. This is making a REST API call, but it's just going to be the relevant results. And it also is going against our result source, which is this guy here. And what we want to do, we just want to manipulate this. So the first things first, we're not going to have, let's rename it job refiners, right? And then for the function, we're just going to go ahead and put no parameters, because what they're going to expect is the caller. What they expect is that I'm going to make this call and I'm going to get my refiners, and you're going to any refiner that you have, you're going to return that, right? So they don't have to specify a keyword or refiner name or anything like that. It may be nice, maybe they'll be usable, reusable if we did that, but anyway, we're not going to do that. So let's do let's modify this URL, and this is just going to be an asterisk because they're not passing in a keyword. So this says give me everything, and the row limit is 10. Now here's one interesting thing. So I can actually adjust this row limit to 1 because I'm only going after the refiner results, and I would still get all the refiners. Again, because the refiners is not based on the results on that particular page, but the entire collection, which makes it extremely useful. And if you're dealing with very large collections, like what if I had 2 million items in that list, and I think 100,000 kind of puts you over that big data list threshold, that you know, using the search index is probably the only way to do that, and getting distinct values for a particular column is probably, you know, with refiners is probably the only way to do that. There's no way you're going to do a REST API query against that to get those unique values. So I can bring back a row limit of 1 because of the nature of refiners. And then I have this select property value, and this is just telling which properties to bring back. Now what I can do, the key parameter I'm looking for is refiners, and I'll set that equal to my managed property name. So, and this is just going to be a comma delimit list, very similar to what you see here. So for right now, let's just go do last modified and select properties. I'm going to actually strip everything out except for title. I want to keep this light as possible so that way it can still be quick as possible. And these select properties are only for my result set, which I do not need. And I'm only looking at the this job posting result source, right? So that's going to remain the same, right? So on the surface, I think for the most part this looks correct, and this is going to return my relevant results, and let's just keep that for now. I just want to wire this up to make sure I'm actually getting what I'm expecting. So let me go ahead and push this up. Oh, and you have to make a call. This is not going to work unless you call it. So we need to call this from the JP slider component, right? Because this is the slider tag. The slider is the one that has the search filter box or the search box in our scenario. So what I'm going to do, I'm just go ahead and drop this in here, service object, and we make the call. And because it's a promise, we had to do the then operator, generic function, and make sure you put your semicolons there. All right, and then console out that the refiner object was called. Method completed. All right. And the results we're going to have in the D here, and we can JSON those out. Oops. All right, and this is going to be relevant results until we clean it up. And I think that's it. All right, so let's save this. Let's push up our component. Let's push up our services. And then let's do a refresh here. And really what I'm looking at, I'm not too concerned with the console. I'm really concerned with the network call. So So let me do another refresh here. Make sure I get the latest and greatest in my network tab. All right, so now let me do a search on query. I was expecting 2, and I do not have 2. Why don't I have 2? Do I have an error? Max count is not defined. Okay, copy and paste trouble. Let's go here. Get rid of all of this because we're not passing any count. Everything else is fine. All right, let's push this up. And refresh. Console is clean. All right, so here's my other result. So now if I click on this guy, is this the one with the refiners? No, this is the one with the refiner. Yes. Okay, and then if you take a preview look at this, primary results, now this refine results collection is populated. And the way that this looks is that you're going to have the refiners sample, you're going to have the results there, and we only pass in last modified time, and then you're going to have these entries, which is going to show you all your different options, right? And you know, with out of the box SharePoint, you have a refiner like it does ranges, like so it has like a date prior to this date, between this date and this date, and between this date or later, that type of deal. So you kind of see that here. Those are your different options, right? All right, so because we're not going after, we really don't care about the last modified time. We want to go after location and department. We want to go ahead and add those in to our parameter. So that's going to be, I dare not trying to type this from scratch. Let's just grab one of these and put the 01. Let's get rid of last modified time because that was just our test, and push these up. And the cool thing about this is that you notice that in my select properties, I don't even have to select those refiners. Like I don't even have to bring them back in the result set if I don't want to. I just need to define those in the refiner collection parameter in order to use them, which is really convenient because sometimes, you know, maybe on your display, you don't need to display the refiner, but you want to be able to filter on it. All right, so let's trigger down now. Refine results. Okay, so now we should have our guy. We go to refiners and results, and now I have the multiple entries. So this is going to be all of my accounting, legal. So those are my departments, right? And everyone that's used. And this right here has the account, like the number of matches you have on those departments. So if we wanted to get really slick, when we add these to the drop down, we can actually put in the matches in there as well. And you know, so for one for departments, one for locations. So you can give them a little bit more information that says, oh yeah, for research development, there's 46,000 plus job postings or entries, right? And this comes back pretty quick. So how fast did this come back? Let me hit. I mean, you're less than a second. It's still pretty high. I mean, 955 is pretty high. But, I mean, for the data that it's bringing back, it's worth it. And it's asynchronous, so you're not blocking the page to load in order to get that information. All right, so there we have it. So we have that. So now how do we extract that information out? So to extract that information out, I'm actually do a lot of code snippets in this video instead of building these from scratch, only because I think the explanation is key versus the syntax piece of it to actually how do you make this work. All right, so the first thing we need to do is let's just paste in our reusable function. You know me, we love to have reusable functions that does all the dirty work, encapsulate them, and use them as many times as we can. So the one reusable function we have now is to get SP relevant results, right? We pass in the Search API URL endpoint, and that digs deep. You saw how I had to drill down to get the results. So that's going to do that, and then it does this dictionary mapping, right? So for our intents and purposes, we have the refiner. It's JSON. It's actually pretty clean. So we want to just drill down, and get the results and dump that to a local variable collection array and return that back. So if you're looking at this guy here, the way we return this, okay, so this is how the drill down. We're going to return this at the results level. So this guy here. So that result's going to be loaded. That says, okay, these are all your refiners, and then within the refiners, these are all the matches, and that's going to be entries.results, blah blah blah. So that's what we're going to return back. All right. So just the results piece of it, and then the caller would then have to drill down and get the entries that they want. And what we're going to do, we're going to make it easy for our component, right? And what we're going to do, we're going to take all of those matches and then dump them into local arrays. So let's go ahead and grab this guy. And I may be losing I think I need that. I'm trying to figure out, make sure I don't lose a semicolon or curly brace, which just kills you, right? All right, so let's go here. I think from a syntax standpoint, we're good. All right, and I do want to use the URL that we just created because I think that's more targeting. So let's delete all this. And basically, we have the restAPI URL that we created, where we only bring back one guy, and we pass in the two refiners that we're only interested in, and that's it, right? So that's good. We pass in the URL here. This is our new guy that we just added in our quote-unquote private method section, and we pass in the URL here and dump that into a local collection. And now what we're going to do to make it easier for our component, we're going to separate the department results from the location results. And that's what these loops do here. So first it says, oh, if you're refinable string 01, that means your locations. So let me dump all those values and dump them to the location array. And then the same is true for the department. So your refinable string 00, your department, dump those into the department array. And then I just create this generic results object and then really set the properties for that. So that makes it really easy for the component, because it doesn't have to go through and then sift through all the different collections, figure out which one's a department. And then also, I also encapsulate this nastiness here, right? Because if this changes, I can go here and change it and don't have to worry about, oh, which component is calling it, make sure that they're calling refinable 003 versus 01, right? So I get to hide all this and from them, and really just says, oh, you want all of the departments here, you want all of the locations here. And another cool thing about setting this up this way is, what if I find something sweeter to get this information? Maybe it's relevant results for the current user, and when I get to O365, maybe I want to use the graph API, right? I can encapsulate that implementation here and still send them, oh, here are the departments, here are the locations, and then you're done. On the flip side is, the only maintenance piece of it is that if there's a new refiner, you have to come and define it here, and then the component that needs it, they're calling, and there's a new, extract it from there. But I think that's a low cost for this type of encapsulation. I think everything else has more pros than cons, and I think we can live with that one little piece. All right, so now we have this all wired up. Let's just console this out to make sure we're getting what we expect. And I didn't fat finger anything, so I'm gonna say locations. Let's put these in quotes. Locations. And then results dot locations, and of course you're going to have to stringify this. All right, and do the same for departments. All right, push this up. And let's take a look. Hit refresh. All right, and it should be we actually look in the console, and there we have it. So here's my department spit out. That looks right, and that's my location spit out. That looks right, and that's just me calling refiner method. Now this is, oh no, this is important, right? So this is the spit out from the component, and here it just confirms. It says, yep, you have two properties, one for departments, and then I have that collection, and one for locations, and I have that collection. Sweet. Awesome. Fantastic. All right, so now let's go to our components. We're done with this, so let's just comment that out. We're done with reading these out, so let's just comment these out for now. And so what we're going to do, so now once I get back those refiners, and I get all the refiners, right? So if we add additional refiners, I'm going to have those in a single call, which again makes this very, very efficient. What I want to do is just go ahead and dump these to a local variable, so that way I can use them in a template. So I'm going to just create this guy called locations, and then dump that to d.locations. And then the same is true for departments. d.departments. All right, and we're done. Save that off, go to our template, and this is pretty straightforward. Let's just do an ng repeat on this guy. So I'm gonna do a control KC to comment that block out, and I'm gonna do an ng repeat on this guy, and let's say item and VM. Locations. What should we do? Locations first? Yeah, locations. And then spit out the name. Item dot. No, it's just item. Right, this is a flat array of string items. And then the value, you want to hit the same guy, item. And really, that's it. Just copy this, because we're going to do the exact same thing here. Do a control KC. Oops. Comment that out. Paste this in. Oh, this is locations. Let's do select department. And then just rename them to departments. That's it. Save it off. Push it up. And now you're gonna, if it all works and nothing fails, we should be able to see those drop downs loaded. What are you doing, Deshaun? Sometimes I get this slider, sometimes I don't. I'm gonna have to dig into deep and see why that's the case. All right, so that did not work. Control F5. Oh, make sure I don't have an error. Let me see. How do we do? Nope, we must have an error. Let me do this. Inspect, console, no error. All right, so if you don't have an error, the other thing is to make sure you have, so I made it this far, so I know my services is passing it back, and I also made it this far, so I know my component is receiving it. Oh, I know what it is. I only pushed up slides, I didn't push up the component changes. Let me do component and services. That was a deployment error. You got to push up all the files that changed, Deshaun. So that's loaded. Let's go back to this guy here, hit F5. But yeah, like I was saying, I mean, I noticed that the carousel, it looks like it's going to do it again here. Sometimes it loads, sometimes it doesn't. And that did not start happening until I put in that it's edit mode logic. So I might have to go back and revisit that. All right, so now let's hit, okay, cool. So now we load it. So I have all my departments. Why does I select department category? It should just be department. And then I have all my locations. All right, cool. All right, so maybe we want to sort these, right? Yeah, these should be in alphabetical order. So now let's go back to our template, and you just do this right here in the template, right? So just do pipe and order by. Now, if this was a array of objects, then you can specify which property you want to sort by. But because this is just a flat string, the order by is just going to sort this correctly by everything in there. Let's push this up. I love Angular or AngularJS. I'm still learning Angular. Like there's so much change going on right now. It's hard to keep up. I swear it is. But yeah, I mean the React stuff, I'm real light on that. The Angular 4, 5 stuff for like SPFX, I'm starting to learn it, and I'm gravitating more towards. Okay, let's confirm it. Alphabetical right and alphabetical. Yep. So now we're set. So now what we can do. Why does that inner choice pop in there? That's not right. Anyway. Yeah, we probably should take that out. But yeah, so now what I'm going to do in the next video, I'm actually going to wrap this video up. But in the next video, what we're going to do, we're going to actually go ahead and wire this up. So now that we have our dynamic list of distinct locations and departments, we'll have the user be able to select those, put in the keyword that they're searching for, and hit execute this search button. And then what that's going to do, that's going to trigger a query, right? And we probably have to pass them in using query string parameters just to get it back to that other page, because we have that search page that we're dealing with. And once we pass those in with query string parameters, we would then use Angular. This is another piece of the component that we haven't touched on. When the component loads, it's then going to look at the URL, extract all those query string parameters, and then use those values to make the service call in order to get the REST API against the right search and result those back and display the results that way. And then we can also use that to pre-populate the search box for the result set, because you have a search box on the job posting page as well. Let me take a look at that. I forgot what that looks like. So this job results page here, right? So this is the one we're going to pass to once they execute. And yeah, and we can preload this with those. Obviously we can do, I got to rename some of these. So I can change this to department, change this to location, and then sort by I don't know, recently modified or something like that. We'll figure out what we want to put here, because the designer just put 1s and 2s, so we can actually make whatever filtering capability we want. But I think it'll be interesting to from a user perspective, whatever they selected on that carousel, to make those the default values here. And obviously we'll go ahead and load these up, whatever is needed. Get rid of all this junk. We don't need that. We don't need this either. I think we were just, testing out the page layout, but then display the actual results here, which is currently being displayed here. That will be the next video. Let's see if we can squeeze all that in the next video. Then after that, we begin into paging. I know a lot of you guys have been talking about paging. Say, okay, how do we do paging with Search or any other general REST API? That's actually the hardest part with that is it's actually pretty straightforward. The hardest part is getting your pager UI, which is done for us, right? But the paging UI is the one that gets a little bit tricky. But for the search results, REST API, all the information you need is there. So the total count, the current start index, and all this other stuff, all the information you need is there. You just have to extract it out and then store it right within within your page, and Angular is going to do that for us anyway. And because we're going to be able to page without refreshing the page, that should be pretty straightforward as well. We shouldn't have to add in too much logic on top of that in order to maintain that. All right, that's it for this video. So I think the next two videos will be really centered around that the search stuff, to go ahead and get this finished, and with paging and all the other good stuff. And then we'll look at, we're actually getting towards the end of this series for this season. Then we'll look at the details on each one of these job posts. Like if you click on this, what did the detail look like? And I think someone else mentioned and say, hey, you started the blog post stuff, but we didn't get to the details of that. So we'll circle back and do the details for blog posts as well. And then I think that'll be it for the season. And then I think for season 2, we'll take a look at, okay, now we have all this good stuff here. What if we upgrade from SharePoint 2013 to 2016? Or maybe we'll leapfrog and go straight to SharePoint 2019, which would be cool. And then we'll work out those kinks and see what that looks like. And then from there, I don't know if that'll be season 2 or season 3, we'll upgrade to or migrate to O365. And when we migrate to O365, the intent is to do everything that we did with AngularJS and redo that with SPFX and React. So we're gonna be busy pretty quick, but I'm looking to try to wrap this up by the end of the fall, right? Or sometime September, October-ish 2018, trying to get these wrapped up and have those series readily available for you. I think there's a lot of great newness and capabilities in SPFX that we can take advantage of that will really kind of get us close to what we're looking for. All right, that's it for this video. I'll catch you in the next video and see you in the comments.